Welcome to the Best You podcast, where we explore the journey of inner peace, harmony, and joy that comes from living authentically. Every week, we will dive into transformative conversations that describe both the way you can create behavioral change for yourself and how to create the conditions that promote peace, harmony, and joy around you. Whether you're seeking balance, deeper relationships, or a spark of inspiration, you're in the right place.
Well, welcome back to the Best You, and we've got an interesting topic for today. One that I don't think too many people like to think about, but I think actually probably there are people who think about it more than they realize, and it's called hitting rock bottom. And when Sanna and I were preparing for this, we were talking about, first off, how many people actually hit rock bottom? Probably very few. At the same time, I think it is something that probably a lot of people think about, like, what if really everything goes wrong? Like, what would that feel like? And then they end up spending a lot of time worrying what they should do to make sure they don't hit rock bottom. I mean, my life's okay, but boy, what if everything fell apart? What if I lost my job? What if my spouse left me? What if I got cancer? What if there was a tornado? I mean, you just think about all these horrible things that could happen to you, and I think it's one of those topics that um, unlikely to happen. I think that's the first thing. Um, but even more importantly, you do have the ability to deal with it in a way that is constructive, and you can think about those things from time to time, but you can also quickly get yourself in a place which, hey, everything's okay. And what's going to happen is going to happen, but what can I actually, that's out of my control is going to happen. What's in my control? What can I do to make sure that everything stays okay? Sana, anything you'd like to share on this?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting topic, and I think I'd like to parse that out a little bit because rock bottom is relative. I think it's interesting you feel that very few people go there. I feel like I've been there several times in my life. Of course, I might just be a drama queen.
So you haven't just thought about it, you've actually feel like you've been there.
Yeah, I feel like I've been there, but like I said, I could just be overly dramatic.
Can you
Um,
give an example of when you felt like you've been there? Because I think that's important for people to relate to. What is it really truly like to be at rock bottom?
well, the first time I really felt like I hit rock bottom was when I got everything I ever wanted. I think I've told that story before here on the show that, my checklist for happiness. I when I checked off the last one, which was getting tenure at a research university, was when I realized that I had spent my whole life chasing somebody else's dream. And I was 36 at that point. So I felt like I'd misdirected 36 years of my life. Um, the second time it happened was when I got a divorce. And then the third time it happened was when I lost my husband and sister to cancer within 7 months of each other. And I felt like my life had ended. So I feel like I've spiraled the drain in smaller ways before, because for me, the definition of hitting rock bottom, and this is coming from a pretty privileged background. I mean, because, I haven't ever had to deal with homelessness or wondering where my next meal is going to come from, or whether somebody was going to bomb my house or my community or shoot at me in any real sense. So there really are people who this is their reality. So please understand we're discussing this from a fairly privileged place. But for me, hitting rock bottom is when the ego goes in crisis, when my sense of identity is at stake. I don't think Scott's ever had that rigid of an ego, but I had so much invested in this idea of me being, competent and smart and a good mom and a good wife and a good daughter and a good friend and, hardworking and successful and all together. I had so much invested in that. And when I couldn't maintain that illusion, it felt like my world was ending. It's
Yeah, it's
silly
yeah.
in hindsight, right?
Well, rock bottom. I'm glad you're describing it the way you are. Rock bottom is our own self definition. your rock bottom is different than my rock bottom. But the fact is, when you feel like you're so low and you're not sure you can, you're so far below the surface of the water, you're not sure you'll ever get a breath of air again, that you'll ever be able to go on. And everybody, I think, has their own definitions of what their rock bottoms are. And I do think everybody probably thinks about those types of things from time to time. I mean, you could be a billionaire and you think about, what if I only have $1 million left? That's like rock bottom. So some people, that's horrible. But that's, think whatever it's scaring you, causing you anxiety, extreme anxiety, especially, that's something to be aware of. And the question is, how can you handle it? And how did you handle those situations?
Well, I also just do want to say that there are more and more people living on the edge of subsistence. And there, I mean, I read once that the average American was 2 weeks away from living off the streets. Like all it would take would be for a missed paycheck for them to be without a home. And I just feel like that's more and more common these days than even back then. What did I do? How did I deal with it? Well, I fought it like hell. I was in denial. I'd go into trying to control and um, boss people around and blame myself and blame others. And, you know, I would react terribly. But there's this beautiful moment, Scott, when you get your back up against the wall. And we talked about this in the hero's journey. One of the hero's journey lessons is that when you realize that your beliefs and practices that got you here are not going to get you out, and you've tried everything, you've resisted, you fought, you've probably gone through all the stages of grief. You bargained, you um, um, got angry, got into denial. Once you go through all those stages and you sort of surrender to it, you just kind of go, oh, well, I guess I can do this. I guess I can tell people that I'm a failure at my marriage when, half the country's been divorced at least once. So, again, it's this artificial sense of yourself. And for me, it's just relaxing into what is and accepting my reality for what it is, and then moving into that optimism. Well, gosh, what does this open up for me? Because each time I was able to reinvent the way I viewed myself in the world. So after that tenure thing, I I gave up the tenure part of my job and went to part-time, and I went on a journey of self-exploration. It was freaking amazing. It led me to this. When I had my divorce, I was really surprised. I had a personal renaissance. I had so much growth and creativity and joy came into my life. Good health returned. It was amazing. And even though the rock bottom when my husband passed away last 2.5 years, it was pretty serious because, I lost pretty so much in my life, many of the family relationships. It set me on a spiritual journey that has, after being an atheist, that has opened up so much in my world and psyche and in my soul is just unbelievable. So cracking open meant going from being closed off to open to who I really am and the abundance of the universe. So I often tell this story because I was in higher ed for 26 years, and people would often come into my office and open their hearts up to me for whatever reason, despite me being a control freak and perfectionist. People would come sit in my office and they would cry, and people would say, Sanna, why are people always crying in your office? What are you doing to them? But they tell me their story, and I would just say, congratulations, you've hit rock bottom. So happy for you. And they would just look at me like I'm crazy. And I just say, this is how you open up. This is how you part with the beliefs and practices, the habits that got you stuck. And you could find more adaptive beliefs. You can create new habits. And it can be a turning point for people. So I think it's really actually a wonderful moment. But again, I haven't had serious threat to life and limb except for small moments. And when I think about that, I think about Viktor Frankl and his work. Yeah. Do you ever think about that, Scott? And
Yeah,
what?
man's search for meaning.
Yeah.
And yeah, being in a concentration camp and having almost no food and seeing people all around you dying. I mean, that feels like rock bottom. And even he was able to find joy in every day, because it's amazing how powerful the mind is. And I just want to say those three stories you just shared were beautiful. They were sad. Let's call them what they were. Each of them was very sad at the time, and I'm sorry that you experienced them. At the same time, my sense is they have made you, each of them contributed you being the wonderful person you are. They had a significant impact. And one of the things that I've heard about people who have suffered rock bottom, it's again, everyone has their own definition, and and we're not talking about if someone's shooting people in your neighborhood, or again, people, if you're dying from cancer. I mean, those are serious rock bottoms. But so many rock bottoms are things that you've created in your mind. You said this is like the terrible thing that could happen to me, and even in one of our episodes, Sanna talked about people losing their jobs. Like that's like rock bottom, and then they end up getting a better job, and they end up doing something they enjoy more. And I think one of the things that I've heard and learned about with people who have hit rock bottom, it's actually like a jumping board. It literally is something that they come down, and they have so much force down that they propels them up to even higher things than they had before. And so I, you know, I think the point of this conversation is to one, have good perspective of what rock bottom really is. Is it something you need to worry about? Is it something that needs to cause anxiety? What can you do to kind of control it? What's out of your control? So try to just feel okay about whatever you're worrying about. But the other thing is, while you're doing it, remind yourself that if the three things that happened to Sana happen to you, or you lose your job. By the way, my one of my rock bottoms was my father passing away in a car accident when I was age 20. Total shock, getting that call. And when you're that age, I was kind of an adult, but I was still a kid, and I could not imagine living without life without my dad. And what I got to, again, my launching thought was, I'm gonna live in honor of my dad. And I also believed then, and I still believe now, that my dad's presence is going to help me to live a better life. And so, again, I used to actually think about things like that. It's interesting. I don't know how many people, especially when you're young, you think about, like, I hope my mom and dad, when they're out for dinner, they come home. I hope they don't get in a car accident. If they're late, like, I hope they're alive. I used to have those thoughts when I was young, and then I actually something like that happens, and it is terrible. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And at the same time, it's turned out to be a great thing, because it's helped me to be better connected to my faith. It's helped me to live, try things in my dad's honor. And I think it's just, it's amazing how terrible things can actually propel you to wonderful places you never would expect.
Yeah, and especially if you're open to it. And I think that that's such a beautiful example, Scott, that, and we talked about this in a recent episode, if you embrace the uncertainty, if you embrace the challenge, if you embrace whatever the circumstance is, then it can turn into learning and growth. And I always say that the bigger the challenge, the bigger the growth opportunity, because you're really being invited to rise to the challenge. And if you rise and you rise and rise over and over again, then you end up pretty tall and full of so much more capacity and capability. And this is also consistent with adult development theory, that our cognitive capacity and ability to manage things and understand things increases when we rise to challenge. And if we don't have challenge, then we don't tend to grow and develop. So this is really, I think, really important. And you can make a, a, so what's the saying? A purse out of a sow's ear. What's the, I'm terrible at those. Um, yeah, you can make lemonade out of lemons. That's one I can name.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's a good one.
yeah, so it's a choice, and that's the only thing that we ever really have control over, is how we choose to view our circumstances. Because if we view it as an opportunity, then we're going to feel motivated and inspired to learn and grow. If we view it as an insurmountable setback, it's going to just be a downward spiral. So I hope everybody will choose. And even if it takes a while to get there, sometimes I have to feel sorry for myself and all of that, but get into that. What do I need to learn in order to get through this?
Yeah.
Really bring it.
Remember, rock bottom is unlikely to happen. When you worry about it doesn't help anything. What can you control in your situation? And then remind yourself, if you do hit that rock bottom, because sometimes you do, it actually could and probably will be, if you listen to what Sanna just said, be a great place to propel you to amazing things you never would have even anticipated.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing this brave topic to our show today, Scott.
Yeah. Hey, we are not afraid of anything, and we will take the topics as they come. Hopefully, this helps you, and we wish you the best in living. You live in the best you, and we look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you for tuning in to the Best You podcast. We hope today's conversation sparked some new ways for you to cultivate your inner peace, connect meaningfully with others, and embrace the joy of living in harmony. Remember, being the best version of yourself isn't a destination. It's a daily practice of growth, reflection, and kindness to yourself and those around you. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it for you to subscribe, share it with somebody who'd benefit, and leave a review to help us spread the message of peace and joy. Stay connected, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time on The Best You.